This is what saved my star?
My mother taught with it for 30 years.
Dax Calloway did not expect the Threnn Queen to kneel before a cardboard box. "This," Queen Selvara said, her 4 eyes narrowing at the water-stained textbook in his hands. "This is what saved my star." Dax only nodded. "My mother taught with it for 30 years. The silence that followed lasted longer than either of them expected. 3 weeks earlier, Dax had been sorting through his mother's storage locker on Terra Station 7, the way grieving sons do, slowly, and only when the ache of avoiding it grew worse than the ache of doing it. Professor Miriam Calloway had spent 40 years teaching applied mathematics to bored teenagers in a public high school outside Detroit, back when humanity was still an unremarkable species clinging to one unremarkable planet. She had died 6 months ago, and Dax, now a junior systems technician aboard the Threnn Dominion's outer relay hub, had finally worked up the nerve to open the last box she'd shipped him before the funeral. Inside were 7 textbooks: calculus, differential equations, fluid dynamics, every page dog-eared, every margin filled with her small, slanted handwriting. He almost laughed. Of all the things to drag across 40 light-years, she'd sent him homework. He nearly spaced the box. Storage on a relay hub was tighter than a coffin, and paper was heavier than data. But something, guilt, maybe, or the ghost of her voice saying, "You'll thank me later," made him shove it under his bunk instead. For days after that, the Dominion's 6th vein went dark. The 6th vein was not a small thing. It was one of 11 megastructure arteries feeding stabilized plasma to the Dyson lattice that powered 8 trillion Threnn citizens across 11 systems. It had run flawlessly for 11,000 years, until a resonance cascade began eating through its core turbulence dampeners, a problem so old that Threnn scholars simply called it the undying flare. Every civilization the Dominion had ever conquered or absorbed had taken a turn at solving it. None had. Their quantum cognition arrays, capable of modeling 1 trillion particle interactions per second, choked on the same wall every time. The turbulence was chaotic, not merely complex, and chaos did not resolve. It only approximated, and their systems refused to trust an approximation. Dax was not supposed to be in that meeting. He was a relay technician, rank nothing, present only, because his supervisor was quarantined with station flu. But when the lead engineer, a silver-scaled Threnn named Ovryn, threw up his claws and announced that the collapse would breach containment in 11 days, Dax's mind did something strange. It remembered his mother's handwriting. Numerical methods, she used to say, tapping the whiteboard with her marker while 17-year-olds groaned. When you can't solve the equation exactly, you don't give up. You estimate it, honestly, in small enough steps that the estimate becomes the truth. That's not cheating. That's Euler. That's Runge-Kutta. That's every engineer who ever built a bridge that didn't fall down. He raised his hand in a room full of beings that had built the bridge, the lattice, that fed a civilization. "Your systems won't approximate," he said, "because approximation looks like failure to a perfect machine. But it's not failure. It's how you solve a chaotic system when the exact answer doesn't exist." Ovryn's crest flattened in something close to contempt. "We are aware of numerical approximation, technician. Our arrays rejected it as insufficiently precise 11,000 years ago." "Insufficiently precise for what?"
Dax said.
"You've been demanding perfection from a problem that was never going to give you perfect. My species stopped demanding that a long time ago. We just needed the bridge to hold." A junior engineer near the back, younger and less certain than Ovryn, leaned forward. "You're saying your ancestors built structures on numbers they knew were wrong?" "I'm saying we built structures on numbers we knew were close enough, then tested them, then corrected them," Dax said. "Every skyscraper, every dam, every plane that ever flew. None of it waited for perfect math because perfect math for a chaotic system doesn't exist. You've spent 11,000 years treating that like a flaw to be solved instead of a fact to be worked around." No one answered him. Ovryn's silence, for once, wasn't contempt. He went back to his bunk that night and pulled his mother's fluid dynamics textbook out from under the mattress, and for the first time in his life, he understood exactly why she'd sent it. For the next 8 days, Dax barely slept. He translated her old finite difference method, the same one she'd made him solve by hand at the kitchen table, no calculator allowed because you need to feel the numbers, not just trust them, into a step-down control schema the Threnn dampeners could actually run. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't the pure, perfect answer the Dominion's arrays had spent millennia refusing to abandon hope of finding. It was a staircase of small, honest guesses, each one correcting the last, walking the turbulence down instead of solving it in a single flash of brilliance. On the 9th day, they ran it live on the 6th vein. The resonance cascade didn't vanish. It bent,
Slowed.
folded itself into the stepped correction pattern Dax had built from a dead woman's homework, and for the first time in 11,000 years, the undying flare simply stabilized. Queen Selvaira came in person 3 days later, which Ovryn informed him had happened exactly twice before in station history. She did not bring gifts of gold or rank, though those came later. She asked to see the book. That was the box she knelt beside. 11,000 years, she said again, turning the brittle pages with unnerving gentleness, and we needed a species young enough to still be comfortable with being wrong. She wasn't wrong, Dax said quietly. She just knew that close enough, done honestly, beats perfect that never comes. The Queen looked up at him, her eyes steady. Your mother taught children. Bored ones. In a building with broken heating. She taught the beings who saved my star, Selvaira said, and she will be remembered on the Dominion's own record, alongside our first engineers, for as long as the lattice burns. Dax didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing, and let the Queen sit a while longer with the textbook, its cover cracked, its pages soft with age, 6 words written on the inside cover in his mother's hand. For Dax. You'll thank me later. He finally did.